Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a hidden force that literally dictates almost every single aspect of our lives, the psychology of competition. I mean, we all know the feeling, right? The sweaty palms, the racing heart, that sudden tunnel vision. But what emotional gears are actually turning inside our heads to make us react that way? Well, we're going to map out those hidden motives today and build a truly wholesome, comprehensive understanding of why we compete. Let's get right into it. So why does an ordinary task suddenly feel like a matter of absolute survival? Just think about your own life for a second. You're doing something incredibly simple. Maybe you're studying at a cafe, running on a treadmill, or just casually pitching an idea. Then out of nowhere, someone else is doing the exact same thing right next to you. Instantly, your brain stops treating the effort as just effort. It desperately starts asking, how do I rank? Am I respected? Do I actually belong here? Think of it like a busy highway. You're driving along at a steady pace, completely relaxed, maybe listening to some music, but when one lane suddenly slows down, what happens? Every single driver instantly recalculates their position. Now, the physical road hasn't changed at all, and your car is exactly the same, but the psychological meaning of that space, it's completely shifted. And that's exactly what a visible comparison does to a task. It puts our entire nervous system on high alert. Section 1. The core mechanism. Peeling back the layers of the meaning machine. You see, competition isn't just a straightforward game structure or a set of rules. It operates as this really powerful psychological meaning machine. What this machine does is take an ordinary everyday action and slap a remarkably heavy secondary layer of meaning right on top of it. Suddenly, typing an email or running a mile isn't just about the physical output anymore. It becomes this deeply loaded question about your core identity, your social rank, and your future worth in the eyes of others. And this meaning machine operates using three very specific psychological forces. First up, it creates an explicit ranking, forcing the mind into a corner to ask, where do I stand? Second, it adds that heavy identity meaning, prompting the really personal question, what does this say about me? And third, it dramatically intensifies comparison, making us constantly scan our environment and ask, how do I measure up against everyone else? Imagine an entire, complex symphony being judged by a single, isolated note. Crazy, right? But that perfectly captures the inherent danger of a highly competitive environment. It takes a rich, messy, beautifully complicated human capability, whether that's your creativity, your intelligence, or your leadership, and it ruthlessly shrinks it down into one stressful, highly visible marker. It literally reduces the entire song of who you are into a single metric on a public scorecard. It's exactly like comparing two lit candles in a pitch-black room. You suddenly become utterly obsessed with which flame is slightly brighter, even though the dimmer candle hasn't lost a single spark of its own light. Competition inherently warps our judgment this way. It tricks us into chasing relative position, making us constantly panic and ask, wait, am I ahead? Instead of focusing on absolute quality and asking the much healthier question, did I actually improve? Which brings us to how we actually perceive our own effort. Imagine carrying a heavy grocery bag through a super crowded public plaza versus carrying that exact same bag alone in the privacy of your own house. In competition, the physical load might be completely identical, but man, the psychological load feels infinitely heavier. Why? Because of the sheer weight of social visibility. When we feel deeply observed, our effort literally feels physically different. And because of that intense social visibility, other people in the room stop being separate, complex individuals. Instead, they transform into mirrors in a brightly lit fitting room. We stop seeing our competitors as people with their own struggles, and we start using them simply to inspect our own flaws reflected back at us. This is the exact mechanism that takes a simple game and blows it up into deep, complex emotions like bitter envy, quiet resentment, or sudden pride. Section 2. The output. How dashboards drive the behavior and identity loop. Have you ever noticed how exceptionally smart people start acting incredibly strangely under extreme pressure? Well, this happens because our internal dashboards switch. Normally, when we're working alone, we operate entirely on a task dashboard, calmly asking, okay, what works? But the moment competition boots up, the status dashboard violently takes over, screaming, what does this say about me? We immediately stop focusing on doing the actual work well and frantically start managing impressions. With that status dashboard flashing bright red, we essentially start performing for an imaginary audience. We suddenly hide our genuine uncertainty because, well, it feels vulnerable. We confidently exaggerate our skills, or cleverly blame the weather, the bad lighting, or even a faulty Wi-Fi connection just to defensively protect our egos. We completely avoid asking for help. We begin optimizing for whatever looks safest to our pride, rather than making the most robust, intelligent choice for the task itself. Now, processing these highly public outcomes is where things get truly complicated, starting with winning. When we tie our results directly to our self-worth, winning becomes an incredibly fragile state. Sure, it might pleasantly confirm our identity, like, I knew I had this in me, or dangerously inflated, making us think, I should always win. But the real trap is depending on it. We fall into this exhausting delusion that if we ever stop winning, we somehow stop existing as a valuable person. Conversely, consider how losing radically shifts from being incredibly useful data into feeling like a direct, personal threat. In a healthy vacuum, losing simply informs our identity, gently pointing out where we need to improve. But under the heavy weight of competition, it rapidly escalates to threatening our identity, or far worse, collapsing it entirely. It makes us internalize a single bad outcome as a universal truth, convincing us, I am a failure. And all of these elements feed directly into a powerful, hidden, self-reinforcing loop. The competitive setting initially alters your natural behavior. Then that new, often defensive behavior creates specific outcomes. Those outcomes aggressively shape your identity. And finally, that altered identity dictates your future behavior. It's an invisible cycle where competition acts either as a steady upward ladder of momentum or a very slippery downward trap of chronic anxiety. Section 3. The wholesome resolution. Turning competition into advantage. A fascinating truth emerges when you look closely at this dynamic. Competition doesn't actually just select for raw, isolated skill. It heavily rewards psychological durability. It selects for those who have emotional stability under pressure, the profound ability to tolerate unfair comparison, and the willingness to just keep going after a setback. Over the long run, having strategic awareness of what actually matters will almost always defeat someone who's merely performing for their status dashboard. So the ultimate realization is this. You have to stop treating competition as a mysterious, terrible mood that simply happens to you. Instead, you need to start seeing it as a completely legible, predictable system. By recognizing the mechanical pattern of this meaning machine, instead of just blindly reacting to its pressure, you create space. You give yourself the remarkable power to consciously work with competition instead of constantly being worked by it. I'm going to leave you with this final question to carry with you. Is comparison helping your focus, or is it secretly hijacking your judgment? Honestly, ask yourself this the next time you feel that intense, familiar pull of a competitive environment. Thanks for joining this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next one.